But I figure any opportunity I get to just record some useful information, I'm here for you guys, but if I can get some information and capture it and record it, then that's great. So just to introduce myself, I'm Craig Hocknull. I've been playing since I was this big, right? So since I could walk. How many of you guys have been playing since you were little? Yeah. Who started later? How old were you when you started?
18.
Okay.
Sophomore year.
Yeah. Okay. So you guys ever heard of the player named Greg Norman? All right. So Greg Norman didn't even touch a club until he was 16. And then I think he won his first Australian Open when he was 19. Right. So in about 3 years, he went from using his mother's golf clubs to winning a professional tournament. And then before Tiger Woods came along, he was the longest at world number one, right? When they started doing world rankings, it's basically kind of in that era. They really didn't do world rankings with Arnold Palmer and Nicklaus in that era. So I just wanted to introduce myself and then introduce the video. I'm here talking with the Chandler Gilbert Community College men's golf team, and just wanted to spend some time with them. I think I'm going to redo that part because of the golf carts going by, but I'm Craig Hocknull. I'm here with the Chandler Gilbert Community College men's golf team. We're just going to chat a little bit about my experience as a golfer and playing this last week. Wrapped up yesterday for the WM Phoenix Open out at TPC Scottsdale. That's my 5th big PGA Tour event, and I've played in, I think, 30 other smaller tour events, from Corn Ferry to PGA Tour Canada, PGA Tour Latin America, European Tour, and in Australia as well. So I'm just chatting with these guys, trying to help them out a little bit. So like I said, I started when I could walk. But when I was about 12 years old is when I thought, you know what, this is going to be really cool. I want to pursue this more. I also wanted to play other sports like Aussie rules football, cricket. I grew up in Australia, so playing all those sports were really important to me. And then when I realized I was not very tall and I was fast, but I wasn't as strong as the big guys that were around me, I knew I wasn't going to be able to compete in those other sports. And I felt like golf was really calling me because skill-wise, attitude, mental approach, it's the toughest sport, like when you combine all that stuff, right? You can run fast, you can throw far, you can tackle someone, you can do all that in all these other sports, but in golf you have to encompass all of that. Your stamina, being out there for days playing and walking, carrying your bag, your ability to hit certain shots from different lies and uphill and downhill and one leg out of a bunker, and your hand-eye coordination, right? So you guys are all nodding your head because you know that kind of hits like a heartbeat for you. You're like, yeah, I get that. Like, I can do all these other sports too. You guys all look very athletic. You've probably played other sports, right? Who's played other sports? Everybody, right? So what are they? Basketball typically, some baseball maybe, football, tennis, any other sports? What do you guys been good at? Yeah?
Football, pretty much.
Football? Yeah. So what's happening in this current period of time is we're getting a lot more athletes coming into golf that are true athletes, right? So when you're competing in all these other sports and you're finding out, you know what, maybe I don't want to get brain damage from tackling somebody consistently like on the football field. You're like, well, maybe golf is exactly where I want to go. So for me, that was my decision. I decided, you know what, I was good at tennis, I was good at track and field, but golf was where it was going to be for me. Then I was able to focus a lot more on that. So fast forward all the way, I'm 47 now, so we can call it 40 years basically, from 7 years old all the way to this point. And I'm now playing my best golf of my life, right? I'm the most confident I've ever been. All my skills are the best they've been. I'm driving the ball the furthest I've ever driven it. My short game's the sharpest. My putting is the best. So when we started this conversation off camera, I was like, just if that's your goal and that's your dream, to go and play on tour and play at the highest level that you can play at, then never quit on that, right? But what's going to be valuable for you and for me to share with you is how to do that. Right? How do you do it? So let me just ask you a question. Like, how do you think you're going to get from the level that you're at now to the next level? Any thoughts, any ideas?
Mental game decision making.
Decision making. So are we talking like course management out on the golf course? Yeah. What's another one that you might need help with?
Learning how to play under pressure.
Playing under pressure. Yeah. What's another one?
Practice.
Like practicing well, practicing properly.
Practicing right,
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely, you know, they say practice makes perfect, but practice makes permanent. And if you're practicing something incorrectly, you're going to make that permanent. All right? So you're going to ingrain a bad habit, and it's going to become a permanent bad habit if you're practicing incorrectly. So let's talk about the pressure one first, right? So obviously I'm playing in the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Most players on the planet would say the 16th hole at TPC Scottsdale is the most pressure that you feel on any shot, right? So let me tell you what that felt like for me. I played it 5 years ago. Have you guys walked into that stadium? Have you seen it? It's nuts, right? So you walk in through a tunnel, and it's like walking into a big, huge football stadium, and you see it. I mean, it's as big as a football stadium because it's 180 yards long from end to end on the stadium, and it's about 50 or 60 yards wide, right? So it's kind of just like a football stadium. So you walk in there at first, and the pressure part of it is kind of like, how do I get out of this arena and not look silly, right? How do I hit a shot on the green where I get an applause instead of missing the green and getting booed, right? So the first year that I played it, I played with Beef. Do you guys know that name? Andrew Beef Johnson. He wore a big beard, and British guy, super nice guy. I had lunch with him every day, and he was great. But he was from small town England, and for him to experience that is like, that's even further removed, if you can imagine, from you guys, right? You've at least maybe gone and seen it, and you heard about it, and you've known about it. He basically saw it a few times on TV, and then got a sponsor's exemption from England to come and play in it, and it just blew his mind. When I got into that arena and I had to hit my first shot in front of all those people, it was in a practice round. Right, so you're able to hit a shot on a Monday. There's still probably 10,000 people in there just on a Monday, right, just hanging out, and they're going to boo you as well if you miss the green. So I actually hit the green and made birdie on my practice round, so that was cool. So I got to feel like, hey, I had already succeeded a little bit. Round one on Thursday 5 years ago, I hooked it a little bit left, hit the hill, and went down the bottom, and everybody booed me like crazy, right? But standing over that particular shot, you're standing over, it's a 8 or a 9 iron typically. Could be an 8 to the back and 9 to the middle, or even a pitching wedge to the front, depending on where they put the tees. And you're standing up over that shot, and let's see, got my 9 iron, walk in, get behind, and right about here, you're telling yourself, all right, like, just commit, get yourself set up, get yourself aligned, make it easy, make a nice smooth swing. And then right about here, and everything can probably change because people are going to yell at you. Like this year, someone yelled at me in the middle of my backswing, and I kind of flinched on it a little bit, and I pushed my first shot on Thursday out to the right and missed the green, and I got booed. But I mean, like, how am I supposed to respond to that, right? What am I supposed to do? So day 2 rolls around, 9 iron again, and I was even more committed, more focused on what I was doing, made a nice smooth swing. When you're in that environment, your heart's pounding in your chest, and you can kind of feel like an electricity. It's like it'd be similar to, if you've gone and ridden a roller coaster and you're getting ready to get on the roller coaster, and you're like, click, 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 and you're going up to that point where just before it releases you, you're like, okay, something crazy is about to happen, right? So there's an anticipation and an energy that you feel. And that's basically kind of like adrenaline kind of kicking into your body. And if you watch some of the final holes, you saw Sahith Theegala hit basically a 2 iron He hit it 350 yards and hit it in the water on that hole. And he was not at all expecting his ball to go so far, but that's what happens. Your body, it's like fight or flight response, right? We'll let these guys go by. So when you're talking about playing under pressure and what you can do to improve on that, it's more about just experience, right? So every single thing that you do, doesn't matter if it's a practice putt here or if it's in a tournament, here's how I want you to work on pressure. Pressure is an opportunity to learn. That's all. I will 1000% guarantee that every time you're experiencing pressure, the next time you experience it's easier, right? So just take it for what it is. Just take it for what it is. You may or may not succeed under pressure in that moment, but it doesn't matter because the next time you'll do better, right? So what you want to think of it as is the moment that you're experiencing that pressure, it's an investment in your future, right? So how do you do that? How do you invest? How do you get from one level of pressure to the next level? You constantly put yourself under pressure. Every single chance you get, you put yourself under pressure. So when you're standing over here and you're going through a drill and your coach is like, okay, you got to make all these putts before you leave, that's one way of doing it. But if you can heighten that anxiety in your brain even further, like let's say, for example, you've got to do 50 putts from 3 feet. You're going around and around and around a circle. You got to make them all. It's one thing to be able to make 50. It's another thing every time you're over the putt to say, all right, this is to shoot my best ever score, or this is to win my college tournament, or this is to qualify to play in the Arizona Open, or this is to qualify to play in the US Open or the US Amateur or something like that. If you can take what you're doing here and up it a whole nother level, then you're making an investment, right? So for me, every time I go online and I pay my entry fee to play in a tournament, I'm investing in my future as a professional, and I'm investing in my opportunity to learn, right? So I didn't start winning tournaments. I've won all of our local tournaments, including the Arizona Open, and I didn't start winning those until I was in my 30s. But all it was just time, right? It was just more times. How many more tournaments do I play in? How many more opportunities am I going to give myself to learn how to deal with that? So when you're thinking about pressure, you're going to succeed based on experiencing something. Like nobody can all of a sudden give you a magic recipe to say, okay, here's how you handle pressure. You just have to experience it. So don't shy away from it, right? If somebody says, all right, I bet you $20 that you can't chip it closer than me. Well, you know what? You might not have $20 in your pocket, but if you take them up on that bet, you're going to feel the pressure. And if you lose that $20, you just invested $20 in you getting better, right? There's a saying that says education costs money, right? You guys know that. You're going to school. Your education to get your degree is costing you money, right? Your education out here, your learning opportunity that you have out here is costing you time and money, right? So think about it that way. The other thing I'll tell you, and that kind of goes to the practice question, is when you're standing up over a particular shot and you're feeling that pressure in front of 20,000 people or however many people are in that stadium, I'm relying on my routine. I'm relying on, okay, my glove, my left hand's in the right spot, right hand's in the right spot. I kind of do this from my shoulder. I come in, set the club, take my alignment, come in, and right about here is when I start kind of settling into like actually engaging and hitting the shot. So I have a routine that I go through, and if for some reason part of that routine gets messed up, then I'll back off, undo my gloves, start over again, come back in. So another thing going into the practice is that being repetitive gives you that opportunity, right? So do something repetitive, practice, but do it under extreme pressure, and then you're investing in your ability to withstand pressure. Make sense? Right? So whenever you do these short game or a practice or driving range, doesn't matter, every single shot that you hit in practice should have a quality have quality to it, so that there is an outcome, an expectation, an outcome that you're trying to meet. Make sense?
It's like have meaning to every single practice shot you hit.
Every single shot, if you can be that deliberate and that focused, all that is an investment in your future, right? If you think about it, if you don't do that every single shot, you're wasting your time. So, and then what was yours?
What was it?
So we had pressure and we had practice.
Decision making.
Yeah, course management, right? So let's talk about that real quick. So what do you think? What do you think that means? What do you think playing smarter? I mean, we all have examples of when we were stupid and we were like, okay, like I'm underneath a tree, I'm on the hard pan, I'm going to cut a 4-iron into a island green, right? We're like, well, could I pull that shot off? Yes. But how many shots would it take me to actually pull it off, right? So decision making. So do you have an example of anything recently where you're like, oh, that was so stupid in hindsight?
Let's see. Dobson tournament. I went right on, what hole was that? 10, 11, 12. What's the long par 3 on the back nine? 14. Blocked it right. I was kind of behind a tree, and I had to hit it around to an elevated green.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than punching it into the hill, I tried to fit it through this gap. Skipped over the green. Ended up getting a nice, pretty little 6.
Yeah. So the best way that I can talk you through that, like if I was your caddy, is like, let's say you're faced with that decision. That's the scenario. You've hit your shot. Number one, you've hit a bad shot to get you there, right? So you're not on a roll at this point, right? So here's how I want you to think about it is momentum. If you guys have ever listened to anything that Tiger Woods has ever said, he always talks about momentum, right? So momentum is mass in motion, right? So that's your physics lessons, right? So this thing is swinging, tick-tock back and forth. Let's say this is 0. This is positive momentum. I just hit a great drive. I just hit a great iron shot. I just made birdie, right? This is negative momentum. I just hit my iron shot. Was it right? I just hit my iron shot right. I missed the green. Did you say it was a par 3? Okay. Your momentum wasn't going this way. You didn't stripe it. Your momentum was going this way. And then you picked a really difficult shot. You picked it was a V in a tree or something like that?
I had to like hit it around. It was like sloping this way, and I thought if I landed it on the green, it would slope back, and I just skipped over.
Yeah. So you picked a really challenging shot to hit that would take all of your skill. There's obviously an easier option. You're talking about like bumping it into the hill. Well, your negative momentum was going this way. Well, then you felt like, oh, I need to rescue myself, and if I can pull off this great shot, well, then maybe I'll get back to here, and then my momentum will swing the other way, right? So here's how this works. So when you're faced with that situation, it's not going the right direction. The only way to stop momentum is not to do something miraculous the other way. Is to do something that's kind of like baseline simple. So when you're faced with a situation, there's usually 3 outcomes. So we got a scenario, right? So here, we'll do it right here. Okay, there's always 3. Okay, so here's my ball. I'm going to that pin on the left. Can you guys see it over there? It's on the other side of the bunker. Right, so here's the scenario. My ball's sitting here. It's par 4. I've hooked it over here, and now I'm going to try to knock it on the green over there. One option, kind of scoot it right through here. The hillside kind of kicks to the left, and it might kick it into the bunker, but if I hit it hard enough, it'll scoot onto the green. But the problem is there's a lake on the other side of the green, right? Another option would be to take it from here and hit it in that bunker. But then I got to splash it out of that bunker, and there's a lake on the other side. And then the other option is to go around the tree, kind of punch it over here. So what do you guys think? What would you do from here?
I mean, smart shot's to go right and leave it. That way you don't have to deal with the bunker or deal with the water.
Yeah. You guys all agree with that?
More green to work with.
It's wide open, lots of green to work with. That was pretty easy to come up with,
Mm-hmm.
right? But in our brain, we start thinking, but I'm pretty good at this shot. I've done it a few times. I know I can spin it. I know I can check it right here. And you go up and you survey it and you look at the water on the other side and there's a rough line. And you're thinking, well, if I accidentally hit it a little bit too far, that rough line might save me. So you start kind of trying to trick yourself into going for the main shot. But the problem is you've just hooked it over here. So you just hit a bad shot to get yourself here. It's not a time to be a hero. The time to be a hero is when you striped it down the middle of the fairway and there's a pin and it's maybe a little bit tucked, but you're on fire. You've been knocking the pin down all day long. That's when you go for the pin, right? So the same situation happens in everything. So let's say you've hit a drive and you kind of thinned it a little bit, but you got away with it and it scooted down the fairway. And it's still in the middle of the fairway, but now you've got it's a par 5 and you're thinking, if I hit 3-wood, I can carry that lake in front of the green and I'll be just fine. Should you be trying to hit a 3-wood off the deck pure when you just thinned your driver and maybe you just pushed your driver on the previous hole and maybe your 3-wood you haven't hit your 3-wood in a week, right? Something like that. So that's when you start looking at it and trying to figure out which way is my momentum swinging. And you never try to save your momentum by doing something amazing on the other side. Now, there's one scenario where all that changes. When you're in the middle of the 18th fairway and you have to make a decision that may be the difference between you winning or losing an individual tournament, not a team tournament, an individual tournament. If you know exactly where you stood in the middle of the fairway and you had to maybe make birdie to qualify for a tour event or make it into a US Open qualifier, something like that, and you knew exactly where you stood, maybe that's the one moment in time where you say, you know what, I got to go for it, right? Even though this is the smart play, what's the point? If I play smart, I've got a crazy chip across the green. Yeah, I could still make that, but if I could chip this up to 10 feet and make the putt, maybe that's a better option for me to qualify, right? That's the only time is when you're really faced with an opportunity to win. And Arnold Palmer always says you have to be courageous to win, right? You have to be bold. You have to play boldly to win. You don't win tournaments when you're just kind of playing safe, playing out to the middle of the pin. But you have a lot of top 10s and you make a lot of cuts and you represent your school well when you play smart and you do those things. Because as you know, you can try to scoot it up on the green and make a triple bogey. And then now which way, your momentum just went all the way over here. Now you're thinking, now I'm 3 over just on that one hole. If I do a great drive on the next hole, and it starts putting more and more pressure. So what you always want to do is bring yourself back to the middle point by doing something basic. Something that you've done 1,000 times in practice, something that's simple. Like the par 5 scenario I was telling you about. If you hit a little thin driver and you're thinking, if I launch this 3-wood over the hazard and knock it on the green, I'll be fine. But if you do the math, let's say you're 300 yards out and you're thinking, if I fly it 260 and roll it, I'll be right on the front edge of the green. Well, if you got 300 yards left, that's 150 and 150. What about if you take your 150-yard club, take a nice driving range swing, leave yourself 150 yards left, then you hit the exact same club again. It's like, I call it on-course driving range time, right? So your momentum, you thinned your driver, your momentum was swinging the wrong direction, it was going negative. You just striped say a pitching wedge or a 9-iron from 150. Now you're feeling good. Then you get up in the middle of the fairway, then you hit your 150 club, knock it on the green, and you have a birdie putt because your momentum is swinging now in a positive direction instead of negative. So there's one part of course management that's just being smart. Typically, you're always faced with 3 choices. One really, really challenging, difficult shot, one that's kind of questionable, and one that's super easy, right? Most of the time, if you've hit yourself into the trees, you just hit a poor shot to get yourself there. So no part of you should be thinking, I'm going to hit an amazing shot out of the trees to get myself back on the green. All right, so you should be picking the really simple one or the medium one just to kind of get yourself back out in play, right? So Coach, we're talking about 3 things so far that we brought up. One of them is practice and preparation, how to practice well. One of them is handling pressure, dealing with pressure. And then the other one is course management, right? Do you guys have any other thoughts on things that you're like, you know what, if I knew a little bit more about that, it might help me?
Pressure putting.
Pressure putting, yeah.
6-footers.
Yeah.
Like it's like a have to make 6-footer, 7-footer.
Yep. Okay. So let's talk about that. So 6-7 feet. What is a tour average on a putt made from, let's call it 6 feet?
40%.
Yeah, we're right. We're like 50%, right? Right. So it's not. It's like you're saying. Like, how do I make more 6-footers? Yes, we all want to make more 6-footers. In round 1 at the Phoenix Open, I didn't miss a putt inside. I think it was 11 feet. Right. So that's a good putting day for anybody, especially under all that pressure. Especially on greens that were rolling 14 on the stimp meter, and those TPC Scottsdale, those breaks are like super subtle, right? So there's lagging putts in, there's aggressively making putts, right? And then there's the mindset that goes behind it. So at what point do you think it's okay to 2-putt from 6 feet?
Straight downhill, big break.
Yeah.
Really hard putt.
Right. So there's a time where it's perfectly okay to lag a 6-footer up there and tap it in. And if, hopefully, it drops in, that's okay, right? Now, the reason why you might want to 2-putt from 6 feet is because 3-putt's a distinct possibility, right? You might have that super fast downhill breaking, a foot or 2 feet from 6 feet. You don't want to run that thing by, because then you probably have a high probability of missing your 3-footer because it's a crazy breaking putt. So when might be a green light opportunity at 6 feet to kind of take some of the breakout and just kind of hit it a little bit firmer?
Straight uphill into green.
There you go, right? So when you're assessing the putt, don't think like all 6-foot putts are not created equal, just like all shots from behind a tree are created equal. Like this one here might be fine, right? This one with a tuft of grass behind it might be different, right? There might be one on hard pan, there might be one in a divot. It's just all basically the same scenario, but it's different because of the lie that the ball's in. And then mentally it's different. So when might it be perfectly okay to lag and 2-putt from 6 feet? The slope, but also if it takes 2 putts to win, right? If you know exactly where you stand and your team's going to qualify for regionals or nationals or something, and you've got a 6-foot slider downhill, you shouldn't be thinking, I'm going to try to bury that and be the hero. You should be thinking, if all I need is 2 putts, I'm just going to putt this ball down there and give myself a straight uphill tap in coming back, right? So sometimes you think through those scenarios, it's enough, right? I will tell you though, a tip that I have. So I use this ruler. I think JC might have given you guys rulers. If he had, did you give them? Not yet? Okay, so I've got a bunch of rulers I'm going to give you guys. This is 1000% the best pressure putting tool on the planet, right? If you can putt a ball on top of this ruler from one end to the other, that'll take care of all of your short putt problems, right? I've used this ruler so much now that when I stand up over a putt, I see a blue line in the grass. Like I see a blue track. Now at 6 feet breaking, this blue line starts out to the right and then comes back to the hole. But I've practiced so much on this ruler that I know exactly what my stroke needs to feel like, what the collision with the ball needs to feel like, what the face needs to feel like in order for it to go straight, right? So I've got some of these for you guys at home. JC will bring them next time. And then on the other side of it is a track that you can roll balls down, right? So if you're wondering where, how a putt's breaking, and you're out here on the practice screen and you go find the craziest right to left breaking putt, and you set the ruler down and you go, you know, you can lower it all the way to here so it comes off really, really slow. But then you can see the pace and the break that it's going to take. Once you've seen that go in off of a ruler, it's a whole lot easier to visualize that ball going in, right? One other little tip, where on the cup, this is a little tricky one, but where on the cup do you want your golf ball to enter the hole?
High side.
High side? High side? It's a bit of a trick question because a cup, let's see, do you have any water in that? Yeah. Can you get a fresh one? Here. Let's dump it out and I'll demonstrate. This will make a lot of sense. Is this still going? Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm going to create the scenario from where you are. You guys are above the hole putting down, okay? The cup's going to look like this on a straight putt, correct? Right? So it's coming in here. When it comes in the front, which it should, straight in, it's going to come in and gravity's going to drop it down into the cup, right? Now, what about if the cup's this way? What does this putt look like from your perspective? Right? Downhill, right to left, coming in this side. What's going to happen when your ball gets to the top side and it's carrying a teeny little bit of pace when it gets to right here, where is it going to go? It's going to go this way, right? Is any part of this cup right here, this cup is slanted down this way. The rim of the cup, if that ball catches the top edge, it's not now going into the cup, it's going away from the cup. See that? And what happens if it comes in on this side and it starts working on this edge? Which way is it going to go?
The other way.
It has to go this way. So what's the ball doing? It's now fighting gravity. When it fights gravity on the low side, it wings up against gravity, has a much higher percentage of going in than one that goes on the high side. So a high side putt, let's say you're putting uphill now, right? And that ball's coming in and it's coming in on the right hand edge and it's on the high side. Gravity's this way. This cup, this edge of the cup is pushing the ball back down and into the cup. You see that? So when you're putting on uphill putts, you want your ball to enter in on the high side. On downhill putts, when the cup's slanted away from you, it's perfectly okay for your ball to go in on the low side. Because if it goes in on the low side and catches part of that lip will actually rim it back, and against gravity it will slow it down and it'll drop it in the hole. Are you guys visualizing that? It's kind of a tricky one to explain. But as you get out there and practice, that's what I want you to try doing now. So the tendency is for most of us, let's say you've got that downhill putt we were talking about, you're like, oh my goodness, downhill 6 feet right to left, you're like, I gotta make it. What do we all do? You all just told me you play for the high side. You play for the high side, then what happens? Right at that last second over the putt, you're thinking, it's got to be high, it's got to be high, it's got to be high. So what do? Give it a little push, right? Give it a little bit more. Then what happens is now it's outside that line and speed zone that you need to make that putt. So if you pick the low side and you're thinking, okay, I need my ball to enter in on the low side, what's going to happen with your stroke?
Slow down.
Right? You're probably going to say, okay, I need to hit it on this line and be confident, because if I don't have enough speed, I'm going to miss on the low side. So you'll probably hit it with more conviction, more confidence. It'll track in right in the front edge, and if it does catch the bottom, now with gravity, it'll lip into the cup instead of going on the high side. So that's just on the downhillers. On uphillers, you can play the high side and kind of bring it in. I like to think of it as like uphill and downhill putts is like hitting downwind and into the wind. So if you have an uphill putt, it's like hitting an into the wind wedge shot. You can kind of throw it out to the right and the wind will bring it back into the cup that way, right? But if it's downwind, that ball doesn't curve as much. So if you got a downwind pitching wedge, it kind of holds its line straighter. So on those downhill putts, a lot of times it's perfectly okay to kind of play it into the bottom edge of the cup there. I mean, we could talk for days on a lot of this stuff. We'll wrap it up, but what you have any other thoughts or questions I might be able to help you with? Does that all make sense?
So what do you do to like if you like playing golf with your buddies and like having fun, how do you get that going in a tournament? Like how do you get that feeling of, hey, I'm just out here playing golf,
Right. So I think what you're saying is when you're out playing with your buddies, a lot of times you play really well, and then maybe you get in a tournament and stuff changes where the other guys that you're playing against, you're not talking, you're not hanging out, you don't know each other, and then maybe you're finding that your play is not as good. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. So so you get really
expectations like
oh yeah.
Or it's kind of like that, like the whole playing with your buddies in a tournament, and then like your expectations, because obviously everyone wants to do good in a tournament, and before a tournament you're like thinking, oh, I want to do good.
Yeah.
When you go out and play with your buddies, you care less. You're just trying to get there on time.
Right. How is everybody on that? Is everybody feeling that at times? Yeah. I mean, I 100% went through that myself too, right? And what it really comes down to is when we talked about practice making permanency, right? And it's not making it perfect if it's not perfect practice. It just makes the bad stuff permanent. Well, if you're out there just hanging out with your buddies and goofing around and hitting all kinds of shots, and you're like, I remember when I was at Bear Creek, I was on the 9th hole and I cut it off this downhill light of 3 feet, and just before that all I was doing was cracking jokes and hanging out. And then you think, well, maybe that's what you need to do in a tournament. I'm going to say it's the opposite. When you're out playing, you shouldn't be out creating a scenario that's not realistic to the tournament. What happens in these tournaments? You're like, oh, hi, my name's Mike. And then you've got the kid's scorecard, the guy's scorecard, but you've already forgotten the other person's name, right? There's 3 or 4 people in the group, and you already are thinking, what's that guy's name? Whose card have I got, right? You're not really in it to kind of hang out. You're not saying, you might have a little bit of chatter. You might say, oh, where are you from? You go to this school, or do you know this person, or have you played this course, or whatever. But most of the time, there's not a lot of that going on, right? When you're out as a team, and a lot of times you're out playing and practicing, you should be trying to beat each other. You should be looking at it as, I'm not going to talk to you for all 18 holes. I'm going to try to beat you. And I need to get in my own bubble and focus on what I'm trying to do. And the reason why I say it that way, not to be mean or to say it in such a way that there's no fun, but let me ask you this question. This is really simple. Is it fun to hang out, hit some cool shots, crack some jokes, or is it fun to collect a trophy at the end? Which one do you guys want to do? Trophies, right? So when I have fun is when I have a trophy and a big check, and I can tell you some really cool things have happened, like having breakfast with Adam Scott at the Phoenix Open. That was me and him hanging out, having breakfast. He and I went to the same high school in Australia, so we know a lot of the same people. He's like 7 years younger than me, but that's fun, right? There's fun, and then there's winning. And in my own career, I don't think of them at all as the same. Like when I have fun is when I go to Topgolf with JC and Hugh and Gregor and my wife, and I hardly hit a ball. I help my family hit balls, and we have some food and drinks and we hang out. That's fun time in the world of golf. And then there's winning, and that's fun. Like losing in a playoff in Las Vegas by 1 stroke and having to drive back for 5 hours after feeling like you just lost your only chance at playing in the Waste Management Phoenix Open, that's not fun, right? So at some point during that round, if I was having too much actual fun, I probably wasn't focused on doing what I was doing. So when you're looking at, like, I've played really well and I've just been hanging out and being loose, probably what's happened is you're not applying extra pressure to yourself, right? So when you're thinking about what's good about hanging out and playing with friends, the good part is you weren't caught up in score, right? You weren't caught up in result. You probably didn't even remember what you shot on the 4th hole and now it's the 8th hole, right? You're not even thinking about that stuff. So when you think about what can you garner and what can you take from hanging out with friends that can be good, it's process. It's like, oh, I shot my yardage. I saw my pin. I said, short side is dumb. Over here on the wide side is smart. You nudged your alignment a little bit to the wide side. You went through your routine. There was no pressure. You took an easy swing. You took plenty of club. You weren't trying to overhit it, and you knocked it on the green. So what you want to take from that, playing with in a relaxed environment, is that you're probably just focusing on the right stuff and you're not focusing on the external result, right? Trying to make birdie, trying to win. I just made double. How do I make eagle to cancel those two out? So it's probably more that you're in a relaxed state of mind and you're focused on that. It's not that playing relaxed and goofing around is the answer, because that environment only exists when you're with your friends. When you're playing in tournaments and you go to play in a US, like a qualifier, a pre-qualifier for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, or you're going to try to qualify for Arizona Open, trust me, the other 2 people in your group couldn't care less about you, and frankly they're hoping that you screw up because they want to beat you. There's no friends. Like one of my buddies in high school, he had a great line. He would shake the opponent's hand, and we played a lot of head-to-head match play, and his name was Trevor, and he would say, "Hi, my name is Trevor. I'm not here to make friends." Now, I wouldn't suggest that you necessarily do that, but that's the mindset, right? So hopefully that kind of answers the question. Take the good stuff, comfortable, process, breath, lower expectations, pick wider, less dangerous targets, right? Something that's smarter, and then just allow your body to react and hit the shot that you already know you're capable of hitting, instead of putting too much external pressure on yourself to think, oh, I gotta execute that shot. I gotta get my score back for my teammates or for myself or whatever it is. So, what else? Any other thoughts?
I just wanted to know how you like to keep consistency.
Consistency?
No matter what it is. I mean, sometimes it might be like towards the end of your round and you're back up thinking about a putt and you kind of forget about what you've been doing, but keep the same consistency.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. So when you're trying to be consistent, I always say consistency of outcome comes from consistency of input. If you're consistent in your practice on the putting green and the driving range and your pre-shot routine, if you're consistently inputting quality, you can expect consistent quality out. Right now, I will say from a biomechanical standpoint, a swing standpoint, consistency a lot of times, you lose consistency when you start moving your legs and your feet around a lot. So balance is a big problem for consistency, right? So if you're hitting shots where the ball's going right and left and up and down, you may or may not be aware of it, but you may be going heel toe with your weight transfer. Like you might be here, you might be on your toes in your setup, and then you get to the top of your backswing and you're in your heels, right? So balance can create inconsistency. When you're looking at your routine and your process, that's your greatest asset for building consistency. The second part of that is write it all down. Document it. We all have cool phones and cameras now. Do stuff like this. Do a video, like when you're striping it, get a little tripod like this, set it up and hit the shot and say, this is what I do. when I do really well. My grip looks like this, my right hand looks like this, my stance looks like this, my alignment looks like this. Then you have something to go back to when you're less consistent. So a really good time to video your swing is not when you're struggling, but when you're actually swinging and playing really well. Because then you want to try to replicate that, right? And anytime you have that consistent input, drills, yardage, gapping with your irons, a certain shape, maybe it's a little fade or a little draw off the tee, start documenting it all. I know that when I hit my driver, when I'm hitting it well, like my caddy this week, he was like, yep, there's your 1 yard cut, 1 yard cut. I just striped it right down the middle. But guess what happens on a 3-wood for me? It turns right to left, right? A cut 3-wood for me is basically like a straight ball or a 2-yard draw. My standard shot on a 3-wood is about a 10-yard draw on a 3-wood, right? My standard shot on my wedges is a tiny little draw. My standard shot on the rest of my clubs is really straight. When I get to my longer irons, it's a little cut. So when you're asking yourself, like you got this whole location here, front right, right? You don't necessarily, I'm not sure what's on the other side of that hill, but let's say there was a bunker. There probably isn't here, but let's say there's something, trouble over there. Just because I'm coming into this green doesn't mean I'm going to draw it in, over that bunker to have it spin down to the pin. If my shot from that, whatever that distance is a draw, you aim at the pin, draw it away from the pin to the middle of the green and give yourself a good chance at making that 2-putt at least, right? So, does that help? Consistency? What else? Anything else?
Anything else? Good.
Yeah, so you guys can go do your practice and everything, but I got this recorded. I'm going to post it on my YouTube channel. It's going to help lots of golfers out there too. But then you guys can watch it as well if you need some reminders on that stuff. JC will get you the putting rulers so that you have something to be practicing on, working on as well. Cool. Good luck this season.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.